All right, another Sunday and another powerful young lady. Before I get to Kirsten Howes, I got to tell you, man, it is Kirsten. I've been for the past, let's see, I don't know, must have been like 7 interviews. 5 of them were women, and most are under the age of 21. I mean, I just don't know. You're 25, but I got to tell you, you don't look it. You're very young, 25, coming on 26 in March. But in any event, I'm going to get right to it because this channel is all about inspiration, and it really doesn't matter what age you're at, because in this vicious world and how difficult things are, people have serious obstacles that go up and down, and Kiersten was no different to it. So I met her, as I met most, on my last bodybuilding natural competition in Columbus, Georgia. Right, Kiersten? Columbus, you stepped on stage. That's where I had the pleasure to meet her. And what you wrote on the booking intake form on what you want to share, I'm truly excited about it, because this is going to be truly relatable to many individuals, especially young ladies, and you shared with being a mom recent and all the trials and tribulations. So first and foremost, thank you so much for coming on, because it is, you didn't get a chance to see the channel because you wanted to try to make it as organic as possible. I'm sure there were some nerves and butterflies on what to expect. I certainly won't bite. I will help and inspire for sure. But you start the journey wherever you want to begin and what you want to share. So I'm going to give it to you without further ado. Again, Kiersten, thank you so much for your bravery. Looking forward to it. Take me to your journey where it starts.
Yeah, thanks for having me and giving me a place to share my stories. Long story short, I was an athlete in high school, and I was never a standout athlete, but I still lived for it. Being an athlete honestly kept me going through a bunch of hardships as a kid. I have 5 younger brothers, and most of that, all of them look up to me as mom. Without giving that whole story, they look up to me as mom. So being an athlete, that was my outlet. And then growing up, my grandma and grandpa, they really helped raise me, and I lost my grandpa when I was a junior in high school, and he was my one person, my biggest supporter. Was my everything, and I lost him just before my junior year softball season started. So again, being an athlete, that was my outlet.
And he was your biggest supporter.
Yes.
Okay, if I can, let me just pause, because you unpacked a lifetime before you got into high school, which I love that there's going to be a powerful message, I could tell already. But to set the stage, because there's going to be a lot of questions on you as you unpack it. When did you start athletics? How early? Take me to the beginning year. Was it, under the age of 6, 7? When did you start athletics?
I actually didn't get started. I would have been middle school, so 6th.
Middle school, 6th, 7th grade?
5th, probably 5th and 6th grade. A little.
Okay. All right. So was that because now, and I know this might, you share as much as you want from I know you mentioned from mother figure. At that time, was there mother, father at all from that point when you recall?
I don't want to be disrespectful, because me and my mom do have a relationship now, and I did live with her at the time. But majority growing up, when I lived with her, like I said, I was mom to my brothers. So I had a lot on my plate and a lot of responsibility at that time.
So not it. And again, there is no judgment at all within. This isn't about mom or dad. It's about where I tried to really kind of get granular on where your mindset was at what age, because then things are going to unpack. So you started athletics in a middle school standpoint, and we'll just say it, mom wasn't fully attentive. Is it fair to say at that point? So mom wasn't fairly attentive with it. Was there a dad in your life at that time, or?
He was around, but not really.
Okay, so it's safe to say then we'll just leave it at that and untouch it because it is about you, but just to get where your mind starts to develop at an early age, the absence of a direct mom and dad, and you now at that time started to get into sports. Where was the introductory of sports pushed to you? Was it just a friendship? How did that interest come?
As I got older, I just kind of like, once I realized that I had to take care of myself, like as I got older, I realized like those were options for me. Like I could do those things. And so I wanted to, and I just basically did it. And like for the most part, when it came to like signing up, doing all that stuff, like that was my responsibility even at that time. And I did have start to make friends that like helped me get involved. I did play basketball, but the biggest one was softball. I had a friend and like honestly, I lived with her kind of. I stayed with her all of the time. And her stepdad was the softball coach. And so like they really got me into that, and it kind of escalated from there. I realized I really enjoyed it, and especially when it comes to softball, I wasn't bad at it, so I just went from there.
Listen, this is the start of an amazing journey and the ignition of a strong mind, because the lack of parental guidance could, on people, you got two paths to go down. Regardless, whether you have mom and dad who are pastors in churches or absentee, you still got two paths to go on, but your taste of that sports.
Give myself enough credit for that, and I'm really bad about talking about myself.
Should, because this is where I'm the private investigator. I mean, that is enormous. So I really want to explore, because I'm curious, the lack of parental guidance. So, and were you at that time early on still looking after siblings in it to a degree at that age, in that fifth, sixth?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, was there any, like, I'm curious, and if you could think of, and I know, you had a choice to go to pursue athletics, which, praise the Lord, you know, what else do you feel like geared you towards? Was it the friend influence and her father, or were you religious, or grandma, grandpa? And what else was in, because you could have easily went another direction and said, hey, fuck it, screw this, man, but you didn't. And that is huge. So people to just to hear that, can you think of, is there anything that comes across to your mind? I know it's a
I never thought about it that way, I guess. Kind of, I just always did it, and like I was the older sister, so like I knew I had to be a good influence.
How about
And
religious at all? Was there any?
I don't want to say no, but I
It
can't.
wasn't forefront. Okay. So it was instilled. So I got to tell you, I mean, whether mom and dad are present or not, the DNA that
I
you
always felt
had.
how much it upset me and like how much disappointment I carried, and I just knew I didn't want to like. I knew I had to be better for like my brothers or
Bingo.
even myself and what I wanted in the future.
You heard yourself, right? You look at the maturity at such an early age, man, that you saw what you weren't getting, and you took the responsibility, and that's the nurturing of, the motherly, I know, listen, internal, right? And I know we're going to get to that, you're a mom, but that internal maternal type of thing to the brothers and sisters, what you just said was key. And whether that was, an epiphany for yourself on realizing that, hey, I'm not giving my brothers and sisters, all boys, you mentioned we're all brothers. Well, I'm not going to allow my brothers to feel that. This is the path to go to. So look, kudos, man. All right. So that gets me excited, because now we have, you shared the powerful mind that you displayed at an early age. Unpack it from there. Friends staying over, your softball, fathers to coach. Let it unpack. What else we got going down the pipe?
So again, I think I would say softball is like the relationship with my friend and stepdad. Like that is really what like got me going, and I did make other friends and have other friends. I that got me going. And then I was always the kid on, like, when you go home from games, I was always the kid that had to ride the bus home by myself. And I think that's very important to notice, like, to note, because I won't ever allow my kid to be that kid. Like, I'm
I
not
was
saying it
there.
doesn't happen, like, randomly, but I will always make sure somebody's there for him, and I will be there for him. And so that just affected me a lot. And if I wasn't riding the bus home, it was because other parents realized and, like, saw things, and they wanted to, like, help me out, and, like, they felt bad, honestly. So, um,
That's devastating. I mean, I have not shared my story, nor am I ready at my point, but I could solely relate to that, of being that person, and probably being, I'm sure I could share this thought that you might have had, is be envious of the kids on the team that just had, all the parents and the brothers and the sisters and the grandmas. Everybody comes shoot, right?
and my grandma, she's basically my mom. She had a life at that point, she was grandma, like, and she had to work and do other things. So, like, she couldn't always be there. Like, she tried to be, but, like, she just couldn't be all of the time. And I know, like, I was upset, and I took that out on her a lot growing up. And I was very envious, because I can picture throwing that out there, saying how jealous I was, or how these kids had this and that, and I don't have it. And I noted in my form that I filled out, like, I let things, like, temporarily slow me down and distract me, but obviously I kept going. But those were definitely, I definitely had that thought a
So
lot.
this is, yeah. So this is through high school, right? Playing through to
So
senior year.
I lived with my mom from the age of, like, 4 up until 8th grade, but in between there, I was still staying with my grandma and grandpa all the time. Both sets of grandparents, really, on both my mom and my dad's side. And then I was staying with friends. I also had an aunt and all my cousins that I stayed with. Like, if I wasn't at home being mom, I was usually with other people.
So you had, at least with the grace, and I'm going to say being religious, with the grace of the Lord and Savior, at least having a support system to help you to get through, because they obviously recognized the absentivity of your, you know, parents, and tried to make up the difference. But they can only do what they can do, right? I mean, they had a full-time life, which is extremely important. A question I have. So, you developed that mindset, and you said you were pretty good at softball, right? I mean, okay. So we're a starter. I mean, how good is good?
Again, I don't like to talk about myself, and I didn't realize how good
Well, I'm asking, how good were you?
like, I didn't realize how good I was. So when I first started playing, I played shortstop, and I loved it. And
Brutal
I was
position.
really,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. Well, then I got my, the stepdad that I was telling you about. He stuck me in center field. And when you're younger, and, like, sports just aren't the same as you get older, it's not as
Mhm.
fun to watch, really. But I was out in center field, and I remember being out there crying, like, nobody else is doing anything on the team. Why am I out here? I don't even feel like I'm playing. And I remember crying and being so upset about it. But he stuck me in center field because, like, he saw something in me, and he knew as I got older, that's where I was meant to be. And that's when, there's a bunch of little random summer teams. Well, as you get older and you get to play
Travel
with
teams.
school, you weed people out. So then I was playing with the best of the best at that point, everybody. And I ended up in center field naturally. And you don't always see a lot of action out there, but when you do, it's
Well,
really
you
good.
have the speed, man. When it's there, they want performance. That is awesome. So my question, that's through, takes you through high school to that level,
I also
right?
played volleyball, basketball, and I ran track for a little bit.
Just a rock star. Okay, so, and this, I probably know the answer to it, but I'm going to ask it, and I want to hear it anyway from you. So we established at an early age, you've got just the powerful mindset instilled and destined to let your athletic ability shine, which you embraced, which is God's given. That's fantastic. So as things became, it could take the toll on anybody's emotion from a depression standpoint, of the lack of parental guidance that one would hope, which I clearly can relate in all aspects. You're kind of, I got a similar story, so I definitely relate to it. As you went through high school and
coaches, like, obviously they guide you and teach you, they're teachers. So like, it was nice to have people like, I don't want to call my coaches parents, but it was
no,
nice.
they took that position in, and I'm going to say it for you. They took a parental interest into something that they would naturally do as a coach, but yet a little bit more in forcing you to lift your spirits, because as a parent, when, I've coached and all the above, recognize some of the athletes not coming from a solid nucleus family, and it happens. It's very common. But my question then, in turn, you're getting all this support, how much of the depression or that type of emotional not so happiness give you to the point, did it affect you to at any point in time to push you in a depression mode? Or did you just use your athletic mindset and bury that shit and just not deal with it? How did you deal with that, really, if you know what I'm asking?
Yeah, I buried it for a long time, and I guess I just dealt with it. I don't know. I just did it, and I knew I had to keep going, but I would say, like, I didn't deal with it so well, like, after I lost my grandpa. I did for a while, honest. Like, you don't realize it, at first, like, subconsciously you're dealing with a lot. And I'm kind of skipping forward a little bit, but after like 4 or 5 years of using my grandpa, like losing him as an excuse, my now husband, it was the best thing he ever told me. Like, he's like, you got to stop using that as an excuse. And I realized I've basically done that my whole life. Like, I let all the bad, like, fuel me to be better. And
I'm going to freeze you there, Kirsten, because I want to back up, because I don't want to brush over important parts. But what you just shared is the comments of a true athlete. I mean, think about it this way: is we just described, bad things from life standpoint, relationships, right? You got relationships, mom, dads, and what have you. And if things get bad as a natural, or should I say a regular person, they'll go in depression and, pharmaceuticals and alcohol and all the above. As an athlete, when obstacles come in front of us, I got to run, 2-3 more miles. I got to do more sprints. I got to lift weights and all the above. P.S., mom and dad and all depression and what, yeah, all right, that doesn't, that's not going to help me get my scholarship. But fuck that. I'm going to push that around, because I can relate to that, because that's what I've done, to that level. Just bury that shit and worry about it later. Well, I got to tell you, you're going to unfold it, but that's not always the case. That's not the best thing to do. But as an athlete, that is what we do.
yeah, I definitely did it for a long time.
Yeah. So you're bringing, let's catch up to the point. You're out of high school. Did you get a scholarship to play any sports in college, or take what happens after high school?
I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I did want to continue athletics. Apparently there was options for me that I didn't really know about, but I ended up going to Mizzou for a whole 4 weeks. I was there for 4 weeks, but I wasn't really there because I also grew up in the sport of racing. So I was leaving on Thursdays and Fridays to go see my now husband, and we'd go racing all weekend, or my whole family really did it. So I was leaving for that, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I missed sports, volleyball and softball most specifically, and community college back home ended up getting a new softball coach. Well, the team was already they already had a team, but he didn't recruit that team. And so I actually got a message from him asking if I wanted to come play center field for him.
That's
And so I was like, oh, this is perfect. I basically want to go back home anyway. I'm going home every weekend. I'm not making the most of being here.
Right.
And I really want to play softball. So that's what I did. I went and finished out I made it just at the end of the fall season. And so then I practiced with the team, and I played in the spring. But I only ended up playing one spring semester because I was one of the only ones on the team that was working and had my own house and had to take care of myself and do all these other things. So I was also racing really hard for me to give that up, especially because like me and my husband, we do it together. That's how we met.
Mhm.
And so when I had to miss that and not be there with him, for him, and helping him, it wasn't easy. So like I kind of found my outlet. Like that's my sport.
You
Really.
prioritized yourself and you realized your purpose.
Yeah.
You realized your purpose.
And I will
That's
say, like in high school, I was an athlete, yes, 100%, but I was never a standout athlete. And even though I was always I was a part of the team, I never felt like it. And I think that's just because I was like more mature and had to be a parent. I didn't get to be a kid. And I think
yeah.
it plays on into why I didn't continue to play college softball because, again, I chose my husband and what we do together and building a life.
I mean, that's outstanding. And I commend that because you found yourself. Now, a couple things I want to circle back. So when did you lose your grandfather?
I was end of my junior year of high school.
High school is when you lost so that was extremely devastating. You mentioned going through, finishing off high school, taking that devastation through trying to figure out college, not college. At what point or age did you, and what kind of racing? Motocross?
It's all dirt track racing.
Dirt track. Okay. So cars.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. I'd love to watch that. That's fantastic. But to not get off the topic. So at what age did you meet your husband where he started becoming your all?
I met him, so I kind of feel like I have to give a little bit of a backstory to that. I had a boyfriend starting in like second grade.
Right.
We dated up into the end of my sophomore year of high school.
Okay.
And like I also have to give a lot of props to like his family because like his family was my family and the family that I like really wanted to have, like that was them. So like and he was a great athlete. Like he went on to play college basketball and everything and he was a great athlete. So like seeing how they raised him and I did get to be a big part of it, like that did help me a lot. But that was the end of my sophomore year of high school. And so then I met my now husband just like 2 or 3 months later. It was the summer of 2015, like racing brought us together.
Really?
And it's funny because he never met my grandpa. Like we talked on and off for a couple of months. I went to homecoming with him and everything, and he never met my grandpa. And so then my grandpa, he passed away in March of 2016. And April of 2016 is when I then went to prom with my now husband. And we have been very serious ever since then. But he really helped fill the void of my grandpa, which it was really hard on him for a while, like I said, because he's the one that told me I had to stop using that as an excuse. Basically, get my head out of my ass.
Yeah, so give me an example. He says when you were using the excuse of losing your grandpa, when as far as dealing with anger or depression or what? Give me an example of that.
I was just really, really emotional. And I say now that I'm not emotional at all. Like, other than for my son, like, all my emotion is just for him. Other than that, I feel like I could be dry sometimes. I don't mean to be. But before, I'd cry all the time over nothing. And I'd kind of use that as an excuse. I don't really
Understood.
remember
Yeah.
because honestly, now that I've grown past it, I've kind of forgotten about a lot of it other than knowing he's the one that called me out and told me like, you got to stop using that as an excuse.
Yeah, well, you know what I see? I mean, a great man, deserves a great woman and vice versa. But what that comment appears to me is he gave you closure on, and crying all the time, I could say, that was the only emotion that you weren't able to bury. I mean, that was your outlet, everything that bottled up through when you were little to that point is just came out in emotions. And, as you grown, as your mindset really got strong, because keep in mind,
It takes a strong person to hear that because I feel like just what I hear nowadays about others, like they would have thought he was being harsh and he's not. Like he obviously cares about me more than anybody's ever cared about me. So
he sees what you are, now you realize how mentally strong you are, and that emotion you had is really something that you controlled from the past. And then when he called you out on it, it made you probably think, yeah, I guess so. but, and your mindset and your maturity, and now, being a mom, share that. I mean, how old's your son?
He just turned 2.5.
Fantastic. So when you had your whole attitude on how you were raised till now, it's like, I'm sure you know exactly how you want things to unfold, is what you were sharing earlier, right?
Yeah, I don't want to say I always knew I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but I always hoped that could be an option because, again, I want to be there for him as much as possible because, again, I knew how it felt to not always have people there. Again, I did have people there occasionally, and even when it wasn't like my direct family, there were other people that were supporting me and helping me along. But when I met my husband, we talked about kids pretty early on.
Mm.
He doesn't want anybody taking care of our baby either. So I, for the first year, I had a hard time like letting anybody help. And still to this day, my grandma, one or two other people have watched him for a couple of hours, but my grandma is the only person that I've trusted with him.
You're very protective, man. I fully understand it, man. I get it. Good. I mean, listen, good for you. Good for you. You control you control how you want it because you know how you don't want it. You've been there, you know, you've been there. I mean, that's fantastic. And he's obviously super supportive of
So
all the above.
before we had him, me and my husband, his name's Austin, we've always been like, I don't want to say at each other's hip, but like we do absolutely everything together. And we've had people ask us like, how do you guys do this all the time? So like we actually travel. We live out of a camper 50% of the time, if not more. We travel and clean up after natural disasters. So like we've built this business, just the two of us. And when we're working, we work 7 days a week, 12 to 14-hour days. And so like before we had our son, he would drive the truck and I would ride in the truck with him. And so like people were like, how do you guys do this? And I'm like, I don't know, we do it, but like we actually do it really well. Like we communicate really well together. But we just knew like what we wanted. We knew we wanted our family to be together all the time. And even now when people hear bits and pieces, they don't know that we travel as a family and live out of our camper most of the time. But like that's just really, really important to us that we're all together. And
Yeah, but I mean, first of all, it's an amazing story and I love it, the togetherness, but you created what you wanted from the beginning, what you never got. I mean, it's,
I'm
it's so obvious from the journey, what you shared to what you described. It's amazing and I love it, but
I'm a very extra mom and I'm not sorry for it. I'll never be sorry for it.
why should you be?
Like a lot of my closer friends that I grew up with that know everything I went through. I'll say that I'm like, I know I'm extra. And they're like, oh, I get it. Like I know exactly why you're doing what you're doing. And they all love it. And they're very supportive and love watching.
With that I'm going to say this, that is great. And that's great having, I always talk about you surround your circle, right? Who's in your circle? But I'm going to say this, and I speak with authority because I can relate. Understanding why you do it and know how it feels is two different things. You can understand, but knowing that feeling on the bus after a game, something happened, nobody to share it with, and you're by yourself. I wouldn't wish that on anybody, man, like on anybody. And I can share war stories like that as well. And if I didn't, one thing I got from my father, grew up in a world where men don't cry. I certainly would have cried all the time if I could have. Now I'm dealing with trying to uncover and try to get closure on things, which you certainly have the supportive. So, how you're living now is just an amazing, it shows firsthand the power of the mind on how you keep driven. And on your intake form, you shared on how much, I'm not going to say you weren't broken yet. You were bent. You were definitely bent and beat up, but you were in no way, shape, or form broken. Certainly had the instinct early on to recognize how things should really be. And you made the right choices each and every time. You should be so proud of yourself because you have so much to offer your little boy on the actions that you take. I mean, I'm proud of you. What a hell of a journey at 25 years old. It could have went, which I've heard many stories go the opposite direction, but they circle back. But, kudos. That's fantastic, man. It really is. So a couple of questions as it unfolds is, you mentioned about shedding a lot of poundage, but ultimately there was some kind of choice to step on stage. Where, what, when, and how did all that come through?
I also was always hard. I've never been happy with myself and my body, I guess. I always compared myself to others. I wasn't very I was strong enough to make the right decisions and do all the right things, but other than that, you're down on yourself all the time and you're questioning why me, basically. And I just never thought I had the body type to do it. I have always had an athletic build, and I didn't realize that was a good thing for a really long time. And I say after high school, health and fitness, helped keep me tied to that athlete in me. And then after having a baby, it was when you're pregnant, I don't want to say talk for anybody else, but for me, my experience being pregnant was I heard so many negative things about how I would never be the same, how I'd never look the same, I'd never get my body back, or if I did, it would take forever. It was so much negativity. I remember being pregnant and feeling so good, and people would be like, "Oh, you look miserable." Looking back at pictures, I really did look miserable. But in the moment, I tried to be really positive the whole time I was pregnant, and I was extremely sick. But I tried to stay positive because I knew I was just thankful that I was able to carry my son and be pregnant and experience that, because a lot of people don't. So even though I struggled, I was really positive through all of it. And so then afterwards, I heard it even more. You just wait till this happens.
I know where this is going.
Yeah.
With you, your mindset, I know. Go ahead, share it. I know where this is going.
That was just fuel to the fire.
Yeah, of course it was.
Yes. So I started working out as soon as I could postpartum, because we got married my son turned 4 months old basically 2 days after we got married. I started working out the best I could. I'd work out super late at night after he'd go to bed. People always were like, "How do you do this?" But I was trying to get in shape because I was married. Well, then we got married, and we literally left 2 weeks later to go clean up after, I think it was Hurricane Ian. I don't remember, but we left to go to work. And so then I kind of let off the gas for a little bit, and I still had all these people saying things and all these negative comments surrounding me. And then obviously New Year's, people set goals, but I wasn't I'm going to do this. So New Year's it would have been 23, I kind of got started and slowly started tracking my food and whatnot, but I took it serious that spring and lost 40 pounds in a couple of months. And I did all that by myself, and it felt really good. And so I was kept talking about bodybuilding, and it was in the back of my mind, but again, didn't think I could do it. I also had negative thoughts at that point. I'm a mom, I'm not going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And I watched a girl, she posted a lot of YouTube videos and documented her prep and everything. And it was really inspiring to me. And so I was like, I want to do it. I can do it. Having an athletic build is not a bad thing. And I knew being a mom, I wanted to do it for my son. But if I ever am a mom to a little girl, I want her to know that she can do the dang thing too. It doesn't matter what other people say.
Amen to that.
I lost my 40 pounds, and it's New Year still, so I'm got to think about November 23. November 1st is when I started working with my bodybuilding coach. And so we kind of went through a little bit of a building season, 4 months or so. And then in March is when I slowly started coming back down. And I don't officially know when my prep started. I would say kind of early, but we had a longer way to go than, I don't want to say most or some, but we had a long way to go. And so I worked with her for one full year, over a year, before I actually got to step on stage. But it was 2 full years of me being pretty on point, 90%
committed
of the time.
You were dialed in.
And just to give a little bit more background, again, I have a 2.5-year-old now. We travel and live on the road. When we're not traveling and living out of our camper, we are traveling for racing. And so we spend a lot of time on the road and in the car all over the place all of the time. And we're very fly by the seat of our pants people. He could get a call tomorrow and we could be going north, or like that happens all the time. Like literally seconds, within seconds, the course of my day, week, month, all of that can
Everything
change.
changes.
And so like I was able and managed to lose 40 pounds on my own and then successfully complete a prep with my coach managing all of that.
So what does that equal? No excuses. No excuses. And that's, the story that you shared, the journey you shared. I mean, it just says one thing, the mind's a powerful thing. And when you hit I always say there's two most important ingredients, and you'll definitely agree with me because you represent it, is number one, having a defining moment, a defining moment, whatever that may be. You had, and there's not just one in a life, there's many in a lifetime. Your one defining moment was, wanting to get in better shape on having a baby. And then the inspiration became every single person saying it's not possible type of thing. That just, made it even easier probably for you because you're destined to. So that is absolutely an amazing journey. So, I mean, holy shit, Kiersten, amen to you, girl. What a strong mind. You're destined even more for greatness because things that you shared this as you said regarding being emotional. Now it's a lot easier for you to, yet you may feel kind of cold. You don't even show emotion. That's because you got such a strong mind. You're so mature. At least
I cried after I walked off the stage, but I wanted to cry walking in.
Happy tears.
I wanted to cry walking into registration because I'm like, I did this. Like, I'm
That's
here.
awesome. I'm so proud of you. That is absolutely fantastic. So 2 last questions is number one, well, good gracious, if you turned back the clock and had to give the younger version of yourself advice, knowing what was in store, what would you say?
That's really hard. Obviously, I kept going, but I have a tattoo now. I have two that I think I have one that says I'm enough because I eventually got it and was like, just reminded myself that I am enough. Like, I don't need anybody to tell me that. And I will say when I got that, I didn't think that. It did take me a while to actually truly feel that. But then another one I have tattooed on my side, it says with pain comes strength. Like, I know that. And like I said, my husband calling me out with that, I realized like me losing my grandpa was a really big deal. And obviously I would change that and take that all back if I could. But like, I know it made me even stronger, and I have things today because of that.
So you'll say, so if you can
Keep going.
keep going, just keep going is valid. And there is one more question, but you spurred me to want to ask this additional one. So, and take a moment on this. I'm going to ask you, who is Kiersten Howes? Who are you? And what do you stand for?
That's a big question. Again, I'm not good about talking about myself. If somebody would ask me something, my mom, like that is my most proudest thing. That's what I wanted the most growing up. And now I am that. And I get to give all of that to my little boy. I'm much more than that. I'm not just a mom, but that's what I'm most proud of.
And and I appreciate that, and I commend you for your humbleness, but I am not going to resist the fact to elaborate answering that question for you, because in that statement you just said you're a mom, I'm going to elaborate it where, you are a mom and you developed your mindset at such an early age to the point that you know what it takes to be the best version of yourself, and you will never settle for anything less to give your boy and other children, I'm sure, that will come, the support and education to teach them that no matter what their destiny is, that as long as they always remain true to themselves, they will have you supporting them and it'll all be okay. And that is what being a mom is. I just elaborated a little bit more from being a dad and having some years on you, speaking from experience. So use that. And, that's the power. And the last question, was that okay? I answered for you.
Yep.
The last question is this symbol, the unbroken. Now, I've got this symbol tattooed on my forearm many years ago. That has meaning. Does it represent to you more than just a word and a symbol?
Just the word in general. It is more than a word, but the word in general is when I was there and is it your wife?
You could say so, yeah.
Sorry.
You could say so. It's not official, but yeah, you could say so.
Okay. That's okay. I was just telling her, like, gonna say it as a mom again, but through everything I've been through, like, but especially a mom, like, you're not broken just because you've gone through all these things. And I think you worded it really well earlier. Like, I was bent. We can all be bent from time to time. But we're not broken. We're unbroken.
Amen.
Keep power through.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your journey, your story.
Yes, thank you.
I'm greatly appreciated and honored of you sharing it. Thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.